This exercise is called the calf and hamstring stretch. It is primarily designed to restore function in your feet, your legs, and therefore your pelvis, as well as your hips, but you're using the feet and your ankles to do this, okay? And you're going to need a strap, you're going to need a foam block under your head, and you're going to be using the strap in two different positions at the sort of toe pad point of your foot, as well as what we call the arch of the foot. So I'm going to show you this just before we lie down. For the calf stretch, you're going to need to put the strap just around the forefoot, the sort of toe pad line. For the hamstring stretch, you will then sort of lower the noose of the strap towards the arch of your foot. I'm going to start by demoing my left. Actually, I'll do my right side, so you can also see how stable my left side stays as I'm lying down. And you're going to come into a hook lying position with the back of your head on your foam block. Then from here, keeping the left foot in line with the left hip distance apart, not wider. I'm just going to undo my hair because it seems to be obstructing my neck. And your left foot is a good distance away from the back of the thigh. Remember, not too close, not too far away. Keep all 5 toes from the point under the big toe, the pinky toe, and the heel grounded. And both sides of the back of the sacral point should feel like they are on the floor. So you don't want to be tilted before you start. You also don't want to be heavily arched into the rib cage. If that's happening, I would suggest using a second foam block or a higher block under your skull. For the calf stretch, you are going to have the sort of noose of the strap just around the forefoot or the toe pad. And then you're going to pull the strap without letting your shoulders round off the floor like so, keeping the shoulder blades down and into the floor with the strap long. You are going to start straightening out that right leg. If you need to loosen the strap, you will. And you're going to start by keeping the right knee somewhat in line with the left knee. If you've got a good range of motion, you will keep the knees slightly separate, and the right knee, the one that's stretching, you'll keep it a little bit closer towards you. And you will lock out the knee. And as you're doing that, this is so good for my calf, you are pushing the right heel away and flaring the toes or splaying the toes and pulling the toes towards you. This is what's going to instigate a massive stretch in your calf. So the foot here is doing all the work. My hands are sort of fairly relaxed, my belly is relaxed. And what some of you might be inclined to do is start shoving your bottom off the floor by pushing this left foot into the ground. Please disengage the left leg, disengage the pelvis and the sacrum. You are simply pushing the right heel to the ceiling, pulling the right toes towards you and holding onto your strap. Breathe. Very interestingly, my left shoulder is shaking, even though this is a calf stretch. And I'm just breathing. Then once you've timed yourself there for a minute, maybe more if it feels good, you're going to go straight into the hamstring segment of this exercise on the right side, staying in the right side. So you're going to move the strap just towards the halfway point or the arch of your foot. Now, for most of us, stretching hamstrings looks like kind of something that requires a really straight leg, bringing the head, the foot down towards the face, and something that overly requires a lot of flexibility. We're going to change that mindset in this exercise. You are first going to bend your knee. I'm not holding the strap. I'm just simply going to bend my knee and bring the thigh closer towards my belly, but without lifting my bottom off the floor. Then I'm going to try and kick my right foot over the line of my face as I splay the toes. Once I get there, I'm simply going to grab my strap, pull the strap very gently down and towards my belly. Watch my shoulders, they're completely flat towards the floor. And I'm just simply using the strap to get the feeling of my heel pushing up to the ceiling and my toes pulling down towards my face. You can see here very closely my legs quivering. And if I want to get a little bit deeper into my hamstring, all I'm going to do is maybe slide the strap a little bit up towards my sternum as I bring the sort of foot over my face line, but I'm not lifting my pelvis or my sacrum. My left leg's not loose. Everything stays really grounded from the back 2 points of my pelvis. My abdominals are relaxed and I'm just breathing here. Can see the flatness in my right foot. It's almost like I've got, if I was to put a tray right on top of that foot, that's how much flex you want in your ankle. And that is predominantly the biggest challenge of this exercise. I'm just breathing here, letting my leg do its thing. It's shaking. And I'm just breathing. That is your calf and hamstring stretch. This exercise is called the assisted hip lift. Technically, you're not lifting anything. You're going to be using a wall and you're going to be holding a figure 4 hip opening stretch. You're going to need, like I said, the use of a wall and the use of a foam pad underneath your skull. Now, this exercise is predominantly a lower body exercise, but as you know, for many of us, the tightness, the compensations, the restrictions we hold in our lower body sometimes have nothing to do with the lower body. So if, and I feel this a lot in this exercise, if you feel other release in your shoulders, your spine, those are really, really good signs. So what you're going to do for this exercise is you're going to come, the mobility that you currently have in your body, let me just start out by saying, is largely what's going to lead your setup for this exercise. So for most of you, I will say you probably need to be about a foot, maybe a foot and a bit away from the front of this wall. So you don't want to be too close, but you equally don't need to be too far from the wall. I would say you need to adequately just bring yourself into a setup where, I'm just going to lift the height of this box 1 second, where you have your legs in a 90-degree position. This is probably going to be a more efficient height wall, where you are in a 90-degree position with your legs. So if you find that your bum is too close to the wall, what you're going to find is that your sacrum doesn't sit well to the ground. For some of you, you might find that there's just restrictions in your legs if you're too sort of far or too close to the wall. So please just get into a position where your ankles and your knees are in the same plane and your knees and your hips are in the same plane. This setup is a bit different from your flexion abdominal position. You want to be 90 degrees initially for this setup. As you sort of progress into the exercise and your pelvis and your hips start to mobilize some more, then you can start to bring your bum closer to the wall just to get a little bit deeper into the E size. So for assisted hip lift, I'm going to do the leg that's closest to the camera first. What you're going to start off by doing is gently compressing your feet into the wall, but without lifting your sacrum, tailbone off the ground. So you're going to keep your sacrum, your tailbone, your bum, or just the top of the bum to the ground. And you're simply finding a 3-point contact of your big toes, your pinky toes, and your heels into the box, into the wall. And then from there, all you're going to do is simply bring, and you'll see here that I'm feeling like this is a bit of a tight sort of squeeze for me. I can, of course, bring my left ankle over my right in this position, but it's causing me a little bit of an overstretch in my left hamstring. So I'm actually going to scooch a little bit further away than I was just a second ago. Come back into my setup. And you see there, just giving myself a little bit more space in which to then get my left ankle over the right thigh. Once I'm here, what I'm not trying to do is just let my legs drop over to the left. This will happen for many of you. You've got to keep that right foot pushing against the wall. Then you want to flex the left ankle, so you want to flex the left toes. And at the same time, what you're also trying to do is open this left hip. Once you're there, you're going to open the palms, keep them completely nice and flat. Fingernails gently compressing the floor. Head and neck are relaxed. With that left foot completely flexed, you're simply focusing on just opening that hip. Disengage your abdominals, reduce any temptation to sort of clench into the midriff, and just keep focusing on pushing that right foot gently into the wall. You're going to hold this position for 2 minutes or more if it feels good, and you're simply observing your breath. That is your assisted hip lift. And once you've done that side, all you'll do is switch over into the other side. I have bigger restrictions in my right hip than I do in my left. So each side for you will be different, and that's very, very normal. Remember to flex this top ankle. That's really, really important. And at the same time, we're trying to open up this hip. This exercise is called static back abductor press. You're going to need a yoga strap, your chair, box or stool, as well as the floor, and for most of you, a cushion or a foam pad under your head. In a static back, you're lying down on your back, legs up 90 degrees. Adjust the foam pad so that it doesn't obstruct your neck. It is simply just under the flat part of the skull. And then for abductor press, you are bringing your strap around the sort of, I wouldn't say the midpoint of the thigh, but towards the sort of upper thigh and not quite towards your knees. And then what you're going to do is take your 90-degree setup with your legs for a moment. Relax your legs, relax your belly. Please ensure that the strap, your knees and your ankles are 90 degrees. Palms are out 45 degrees away from the body, fingers are wide, palms facing upwards. Gently pressing the sort of bed of your fingernails into the ground, but relaxing the tops of the shoulders so that we can, at every opportunity in a static back, help our shoulders reset themselves into a nice and neutral and open position. Now for static back abductor press, there's 2 ways to do this exercise. The majority of the time, I get people to do what we call isometric or a constant hold, in which case you are pulling the thighs outwards into the strap. So you are abducting, you're pulling your thighs outwards. As you do that, you are constantly holding the strap in a pull as you relax your feet, your lower legs, your thighs, your sacrum, your pelvis, your abdominals. And you are simply engaging and learning how to engage the side muscles of your thighs, as well as the saddle part of the glute for some people, and your hamstrings. Feet are not flexing, they're completely relaxed. And you will hold this exercise for 5 minutes in an active pull. The other way to do static abductor press will be a repetition-based exercise. And if you are instructed to do them on a repetition base, you will pull and you will release. You will pull and you will release. And as you pull, you're trying to work both the legs at the same time, but without any interference from your abdominals, the rib cage, the shoulders, or your pelvis. So that's static abductor press. Static back knee pillow squeezers. You need your chair, your box, or your stool. You will need a cushion in order to squeeze. And if you've got an inability to lay down on the ground with your whole spine to the floor, you're also going to need a cushion or a block under your head. Static back, by virtue of the name of the exercise, means we're going to come lie down on our back. And in a static position, that would mean we are in a passive position with our legs and our lower body. Like you see here, I'm just placing my foam pad underneath the flat surface of my skull. There are no interruptions or sort of, the edge of the block doesn't sit into the back of my neck. So my neck is very mobile, very free. And then with my legs in that 90-degree setup, all I'm doing here, in order to activate the inner thigh muscles and reposition my pelvis, but also allow my shoulders to come back into the floor, my spine to sit in a nice sort of open, tall kind of curvature. Arms are out 45 degrees, my back of the fingernails are gently pushing down into the floor. the first thing I'm going to do is not squeeze the pillow. The first thing I'm going to do is make sure my legs are fully relaxed. From my ankles, my lower legs into my thighs. I can take a minute here just to settle in. And then I'm going to disengage my abdominals and my pelvic floor muscles. For some of you, that may be already quite difficult. And then using the inner thigh muscles alone without engaging my abdominals, my pelvic floor muscles, I squeeze the pillow and I release. And I want to release the pillow almost to a point where the pillow will drop between my thighs. And I release. So as you squeeze, there's a small pause. And then you relax. No tension in your shoulders, no tension in your arms. There may be a residual reaction in your arms like there is in mine, and that's totally fine. The static back nature is that there will be some upper body restoration residual. Squeeze, release. Squeeze, release. And ideally for static back knee pillow squeezes, you will do 3 sets of 20 repetitions. This exercise is called static back. It is a lower body driven exercise, but it will significantly help you reposition your pelvis, your lower legs and ankles if you've got dysfunctions there, your spine, as well as rework your shoulders, your forearms, as well as any sort of issues in your neck and your wrists. So it is a full body exercise technically, but with a focus on releasing your hip flexors that then does all the magic in every other part of your body. For static back, we are lying down on our back in a static position, which means it's quite a passive exercise. You are going to need a box, a chair, or a stool, and you will come to lie down on your back as you put your legs up in a 90-degree position on top of your chair, your box, or your stool. Now, for some of you, a bit like me, if you've got a bit of a rounding on your shoulders or you've got a neck that's dropping forwards, you'll see that your chin juts up a little bit off the floor, or you find it difficult to keep your rib cage, your shoulder blades, as well as your sacrum and your pelvis down on the floor. So all you're going to need is either a sort of foam pad or a thin pillow. This is 1 inch or just a little bit more than 1 inch. You might need something that's a bit thicker. You'll have to check what works for you in order to bring your spine and your shoulders and your pelvis down on the floor. So if you feel like your ribs are pointing up like so, and there's a big gaping under the spine here, you probably need to elevate your head a little bit more in order to release the spine fully. Then you want to make sure that your knees are just into the edge of your chair or your box. Now, for me, the box I'm using is a little bit sort of taller than I need it, a little bit higher than I need it. So in order for me to maintain a position in my legs that's 90 degrees, I need to bring my knees slightly away from the edge of the chair. That way my calves are fully rested onto the top of the chair or the box, and my feet can't just passively roll out, and nor can my knees. Then for the sort of positioning of your arms, you want them 45-degree angle away from the side of your body. And what you don't want to do is sort of cock your wrists. So I see a lot of people with forearm and wrist dysfunction. They kind of laterally, or medially rather, they flex their wrist. You see here, I'm just kind of kinking my wrist. You've got to make sure that your fingers are in the same plane as your forearm. Fingers are wide, and you are pushing your nail beds, this is a really important cue, down gently into the floor. And all of a sudden you may find, like I am now, that your left shoulder, something in your left armpit, the left forearm starts to sort of kick in. That's a really good sign, but also a really good indication that even though this is a lower body driven exercise, very helpful for the upper body. So what we're going to now focus on for this duration of the exercise is passively relaxing the thigh muscles. Now for most of you, you will probably be holding a lot of inherent pressure, tension in the inner thighs, the outer thighs, maybe even in your feet. And all you've got to focus on is feeling like the ground is kind of like holding you like a cloud as you just kind of melt into this exercise. It's actually a lot more challenging than it looks. And the challenge for most people is the inability to just let go of this tension. And what you're trying to kind of feel is like your legs are dropping out, but without actually dropping out. I know it sounds ironic or counter sort of intuitive, but essentially you're just letting your calves take all the weight
and feel like your sacrum's just melting even more into the ground. Static back is what we call a golden exercise, can be done at the start of a menu, at the end of a menu, and can be done on its own, particularly when your body's in a bit of distress, high levels of pain, and doesn't feel like it's very sort of neutral, or in a position where you travel a lot. This can be something you even do in your hotel room. This is your static back exercise.